I've been hearing about, such a distinguished audience talking about things like how do you get legal to be on the board? Well, I took the easy path. I just set up my own company, and here I am. Hello, everyone. I'm really privileged to speak before all of you today and present my ideas. All of you holding very distinguished positions, playing very important roles in your respective organizations. I just want to ask you a question. How many of you have seen this movie, Three Idiots? Just raise your hands. I guessed a lot of them. What are those dialogues, very relevant dialogues in the movie? Anybody? All is well. Your management, your executive leadership, your board wants to hear the general counsel say, all is well, right? But when you say that, you are not, hopefully you are not scared that something is happening in the background, right? All is actually well. Legal, general counsel, the legal team needs to ensure that all, it's not just all is well, but all is actually well, right? So that's their role. What is the other dialogue? There was another dialogue. Pursue excellence, not success. And that's the theme of what I'm going to speak about today. And how do you do that, right? So while I might have taken the easy way to become a director on the board, to be on the board, excellence is the way for all of us to try and aspire to that position. But it's not just about aspiring to be a director, it's much more than that. So I'm going to try and, do it a little differently. The title says legal operation, but I'll explain what that is in a little while. If you pursue excellence, of course, it will make not only all is, it will not all will be well, but all will be much better, right? And how do you do that? I'm going to try and see if I can propose some ideas to you. But what does excellence really look like? Does anybody know what excellence looks like? Because you're going to pursue excellence. How are you going to pursue excellence if you don't know what it looks like? Something like this. Is this excellence? No, this is not excellence. This is success. What is excellence is what you don't get to see. Excellence, and this particular example over here is actually a demonstration of excellence. Gopi Chand, all of you might know, was, I think in 2001 he was All England, I don't know what it is called, but he was a badminton champion of a very prestigious title. He took his excellence and he institutionalized it in the form of his academy, right? And what is the result? You have some extremely accomplished players in badminton, champions who have won accolades for India for themselves. P.V. Sindhu, Saina Nehwal, Ashwini Ponnappa, S. Kidambi, many more of them. Right? So this is what we are talking about. You need to focus on excellence. The success will automatically follow. Now for our purposes, how do we apply it to the domain that we are in? I would just tweak the dialogue a little bit and I would say build excellence. Instead of pursuing it, I would say build excellence. You're not chasing anything. Value will automatically follow. And what is value? By value, I don't mean just money. Yes, it is one of the elements of value, but value is much more. And when we are talking about the themes of this particular conclave today, and there is, I think, a session later on in the day, and even Justice Krishna alluded or he spoke about it specifically, ESG, right? So there can be ESG objectives also as an example of value. But the question still remains, what exactly is excellence? Now, excellence, I will just propose to all of you that excellence is something like this. It's a journey. It is not really a state. Yes, you achieve it in stages, but it's a journey of continuous learning and improvement. It seems a little fuzzy at times, right? What is this exactly that you're trying to do over here? What does excel mean? Excel means to do better. So better than what you are. So even if you are a very mature organization, it will be very difficult for you to say, I don't need to build excellence. I'm already excellent. But that's not it, right? You don't reach any endpoint. You keep improving and getting better and better. Your business keeps growing, and therefore you need to keep growing. Your team needs to be growing. How do you learn, right? You learn and you improve, and you keep going by steps. I think even the session we had before this, compliance is a journey, right? You keep learning. You falter, you again learn, you observe from that, and then you keep on going. So learning is basically observing. Observing where things are going wrong, observing even where things are going well. What's working, what's not working, you should observe both and then act accordingly. So where can we have excellence? As far as we are concerned, excellence can be in different legal performance areas. These are just some of the areas, and these are constantly evolving, but the basic ones at least are up over here. Commercial contracts, you do contracts day in, day out with your customers, with your business partners, with your vendors or suppliers, and many others as well. Then compliance, we have already seen is being spoken about. Intellectual property rights, very important, particularly for those companies that are IP intensive. Disputes may arise, you should try to minimize them, but they may arise. Then how do you handle them so that they don't ultimately end up in litigation, right? Early stage dispute management is what I'm referring to. Privacy, another very important emerging topic, and this morning we heard about the fact that now, of course, there's a new data protection bill that's likely to be brought into force very, very soon. And there are several other areas as well. So how do you go about this journey of excellence? Now, there are different ways to look at it. You may have some very brilliant players in your team, excellent lawyers. You will be excellent. You would have done excellence in certain transactions, but how do you actually, the important part is how do you actually institutionalize this, okay? And therefore, what I would propose over here is that look at institutionalizing your individual excellence, your team members' individual excellence, the transactional excellence that you may have achieved. For example, what happens if you have your brilliant lawyer on leave? Then what happens? Will things fall through the cracks? Or let's say for transactional excellence, you know something's really of strategic importance or something is very important, high value deals. I'll put my best resources on it. I'll put my best team members on it. But you need to institutionalize this, okay? Now, the way to do that is what I call as systems excellence. We keep hearing, become business partners, collaborate. So you have to understand, and I'm sure you do, that all the work that you do is actually a cross-functional work. It involves some touch points with sales, with IT, with products, with tax, with finance, with a number of different functions, right? So if you achieve systems excellence is exactly this, achieving excellence in a legal performance area that involves cross-functional activities. And if you achieve systems excellence, that in turn can further drive individual excellence. You can make excellent individuals out of those who might not have been so. You can make every transaction, every transactional deal that you do excellent as well. Let's take the area of contracting just as an example, because this is all otherwise theory. If you have to take contracts to execution effectively and efficiently, that of course is an area of legal performance, getting contracts done. What does effectively mean? These are two different words. Effectively means getting it done with an appropriate balance of both risks as well as benefits, right? Legal typically is seen as somebody who is very risk focused. But I know things are changing now, and they have changed a bit, but they can change a little faster. You have to look at it as a proper allocation of risk and reward. Efficiently means getting the contracts done faster and with reduced costs. So you have to balance both efficiency as well as effectiveness. As I already said, contracting involves a lot of cross-functional activities. You have to work with business, you have to work with other stakeholders. So if you are able to get excellence in collaboration, that is what I would call as systems excellence. There are many other areas where you can also do excellence. I just give contracting as one example. But if you think about it, you can achieve excellence even in the other areas that I just spoke about. Now, how do you go about institutionalizing and getting systems excellence? If you look at it, as if say, again, let's go back. How do you work? Do you work in isolation? Do you work in a silo? You don't, right? You work with business. When I'm using business here as a term, I mean various other stakeholders also. I'm just bunching them under one group. You work with HR, you work with admin, you work with finance, you work with sales, you work with IT, you work with a number of different functions. When there are handoffs, right? If the handoffs are not efficient, there are gaps in the handoffs, then there are going to be risks. But sometimes there is also overlaps. And if there are overlaps, then there are inefficiencies. Inefficiencies carry costs with them. So there are opportunities at every stage in collaboration, in systems that you are working with, in areas that you are working with. So these are typical hurdles, the gaps, the overlaps are typical hurdles that you will see. But also remember one thing, I remember, I do not know how many of you have heard of Dr. Eliyahu, if I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Goldratt. He's developed something called the theory of constraints. And there's an interesting concept in that. That concept is basically that a system is only as strong as it's actually about a chain. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? So similarly, your system is only as strong as its weakest link. So what is that link? Now you may say, this is not my job, but if you want to be a business leader, you want to get to the board, you want to add value to the business, then you need to think about this as well. So the process of, or the approach that we would take to getting systems excellence will be through identification of what are the areas of improvement that you can have. Compliance, we are seeing areas of improvement. Contracting, can you do faster? Can you do with better value extracted from that? And I'll talk about that a little bit more. In case I run out of time, I might just skip a couple of case studies, but I think that will be very useful if I can get to cover that as well. What you do is you have to deliver these improvements, identify areas of improvement and deliver those improvements with a very judicious combination of technology, people, process, and legal content or law content. And this is no particular order. So sometimes you may have more content. I think compliance is now, earlier I remember when I was looking at a compliance tool when I was in-house in 2008, I saw tools that had just the format, right? Just the tables, and they would give you alerts, etc. But you had to put the content in yourself. Then came in players like, I think, Legacy, Explosion, and they brought content with them, and they put it in a very simple form. Right? So that's an improvement that has happened. So a proper combination of all of these elements, and there may be other elements as well, is something you need to think about. I know that you get occupied in your day-to-day work with risk, but trust me, if you look at root causes, you will be able to solve problems and free up your time much more. I'm coming to that again in a little while. Also, remember that the outcome of systems excellence is something like, in terms of value, it will be greater than the sum of the individual parts. All right? Question is now, the challenge is, how do you identify where improvements are required and by how much? I would just propose, and this is where I bring in the concept of KPIs. You would have heard of this term, right? And you would have different meanings for it. Key performance indicators. These should actually be numbers. Now, I know that lawyers are not very comfortable with numbers in this particular sense. You can't measure a lawyer's performance. You can't measure this performance. But we are talking about measuring performance of a legal system, of a legal performance area, which involves much more than lawyers. It involves business as well. It involves processes. It involves certain instances that may be happening as well. So you can look at, I'll just give you some examples very quickly of the types of KPIs and metrics, and I'll give you the difference also between these two, though you might already be knowing it. I would look at two key types of metrics, operational metrics and, operational KPIs and financial KPIs. And in each area, I will give you some examples. This is not an exhaustive list, it's very, very small example. There are many more you can discover for yourself, and you pick what is relevant for yourself. Percentage of contracts where opposite party template is used. Just imagine if your opposite party's template is being used consistently, the amount of time your team has to spend on reviewing. So therefore, you need to have more resources, okay? Now, how do you get your template to be used? You develop good, fair templates. Just an example, think about it. And also, when you develop templates, your templates should be fair and balanced, otherwise you'll get a lot of red lines. I've experienced this time and again. You get back a poorly drafted template, lot of red lines, lot of iterations, lot of friction points. Anyway, there are many other things. Financial KPI, just as an example in contracting, hidden costs and hidden discounts. You would have heard this term. Now, this is something which is hidden in clauses that are there within contracts. We have done studies of this in my past avatar in consulting, and it has shown that there's a lot of value that you can add to the business in terms of the P&L and a balance sheet as well. I said, if you have to develop a KPI like this, as you can see, the element over here, the metrics that we are talking about is the cost, the time. There could be things like efforts that you're putting in terms of time again, hours or days. And you can also talk about instances that are happening. Number of non-compliances happening. Amount of penalties that are coming up in compliance or arising out of non-compliance. These are KPIs you can use to track. I'm conscious that I am over time, so I am going to actually quickly skip past the case studies. All right? Thank you. But I still need to go a little more. I have a couple of things more to say if you'll allow me a couple of minutes. Thank you. So how do you implement legal operations? And I'm going to skip quickly past these two. We can always have a conversation outside. I have an information desk for speaking about this. I'll just give you the process, okay? And this is a very high-level process. If you first you have to identify which are the important KPIs. You measure current performance against those KPIs, and then you determine some benchmarks. Now, what kind of benchmarks? They can be external benchmarks. I have hardly seen external benchmarks. So if you don't have external benchmarks, develop your own internal benchmark. All right, and there will be pockets of excellence inside your organization. Look for them. I remember a particular division doing contracts extremely well and another division not doing so well. So there was something to be learned by this particular other division to learn from the one that was doing it really, really well. Or else, set your own benchmarks even if you don't have internal benchmarks. Set some aspirational target. Identify the root causes. This is a very simple methodology. You can get a solution only if you are able to find out the root cause. Now, this requires a little bit of practice. How do you find root causes? Then you set phase targets. I heard the audience over here, the panel over here talking about do compliance in phases. You do that in phases, set phase targets for improvement. Then you devise the solutions to fix the causes. And of course, it should be time-bound. It should be planned out properly. Project management is another skill that maybe legal teams can try and develop. Implement those solutions in a time-bound manner. Then again measure performance improvement based on the KPIs and compute the value that has been derived from improvement. Just to give you an example, and I skipped past the case study, but when we did contracting excellence, we found that we could save or pull back at least 5 to 10% of the contract value, which goes directly to the bottom line. Now, if you extrapolate that to your entire revenue, you may not be able to do it across your entire revenue, but at least on 50% of your revenue, if you are able to do it, it adds a lot of value. There are some rules I will leave you with, some pointers on how you go about setting up the KPIs. They should be very clear and specific, so you can measure them. Use them harmoniously and optimally. What do I mean by that? So, for example, if your KPI is turnaround time on contracts is 5 business days, that does not mean to say that the value or the risk in the contract should increase, right? You have to balance it out. You cannot get speed at the cost of risk. You have to balance these two. Just as, for example, if you tell courts, speed up litigation, close cases faster, but they cannot compromise on the principles of natural justice. They have to address that as well. Guard against inertia. You feel you have achieved something, yes, celebrate, but then use that to actually motivate you to do a little more. You have to keep looking. As I said, excellence is a journey of continuous improvement. Last is, why do you need to pursue excellence? Pretty obvious, but it can move you from reactive to proactive to predictive. What do I mean by predictive? Predictive, I'll give you an example. Spotify General Counsel, the first General Counsel. I don't know if you know the story or if you've seen it on Netflix, but it's a fact actually. She helped to devise the premium model, which led to a complete jump, and it was a game changer for Spotify, right? So it removed ads, made the experience better for users, and gave them a jump in revenue. You can move from a support function to a business function. I heard, again, one panel saying, we are a cost center. You might be thinking you are a cost center, but actually you are a profit center. You just have to discover how you are a profit center. Again, by doing KPIs, value computation, you can get that. So move from a cost center to a profit center. And finally, I'll leave you with, take off on your own journey of excellence. Make a start. How do you do that? Start small. Start with a pilot. Look for one area which you're doing particularly well. Look for an area where you think you're not doing well. Be honest with yourself, okay? I mean, you may be able to say it all is well, but as I said, you have to make sure that all is actually well and can get better. Thank you very much.